Hello and welcome to week 2, episode 2 of From the Top Rope, presented by Barstool Sports. I am your host, Robbie Fox. With me is my co-host, Jared Carrabis. Jared, we have a fucking huge show today.
I'm very excited. And this was one of the big things that I said going into this was, like when I do the baseball podcast and I have the Red Sox guests on, it's like, I know these people in real life. It's not a big deal. Like they're a big deal to some people, but to me, it's like, it's whatever. But then for this, I was like, we're going to have some guests on this podcast where I'm just going to be like, holy shit. Like this is so-and-so. This is, and with this is, Cody Rhodes, big fan. Kevin Owens, tremendous fan, like huge fan. So to have Kevin Owens as our second guest, I would say that that's making quite the little statement there, Octagon Bob.
Yeah, big deal very quickly. From the Top Rope is becoming, thanks to the fans mostly, rating, reviewing us 5 stars. Make sure you do that on iTunes. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at From the Top. We left out the rope. Kevin Owens' interview, it went like 36 minutes or something like that. He gave us a lot of time. I think people are going to really dig it. I finally talk about how I know him. He talks about his favorite match of all time, which is a wild, wild match.
Yeah.
You guys are going to be shocked when he says that. There's just so much in that one interview that, I think it's going to be hard to top that. But we got to get into the week in wrestling real quick because, like I said, it's a huge show. We have a huge interview later, so let's get into it. I went to an indie show last weekend with Cody. We talked about it a little bit in the interview. I was like, oh, yeah, I'd like to go to that show. Robbie Rhodes made an appearance.
My question to you is, how did you get into the indie scene? Because for me, as a not casual, I'm a pretty diehard WWE fan, but I would say like a casual pro wrestling fan in the sense that I'm not going looking for the independent scenes. What is it that made you say, all right, WWE just isn't enough for me? Like, I love that product, but I'm going to go and look for other promotions too.
It wasn't even necessarily that WWE wasn't enough and I went seeking promotions. In 2009, I had started getting into like wrestling forums, and there was a huge topic on one of them that Bryan Danielson had just signed to WWE or was in talks to sign with WWE. And people were freaking out. They were like, oh my God, this could be the greatest signing ever. And I was like, I don't know who this guy is. So I found a link to a match he had against Nigel McGuinness at Ring of Honor Unified 2006. And I watched the match, and I was like, holy shit, that was amazing. And as soon as it was over, I wound the tape back and watched it twice. Like, I watched it twice in one day, and I was like, that was phenomenal. I need to like start taking notice that there's other wrestling other than WWE, and I knew about WCW, but I never really explored out. And once that happened, it kind of blew up. In, I think, 2011 was the first time I watched New Japan because I heard of Fergal Devitt, who is now Finn Balor in the WWE. He was in the Best of the Super Juniors tournament. I think that's the first year he won it. He won it 2 years. But yeah, it was Daniel Bryan, who we'll talk about a little later in the show when we talk cream of the crop.
For me, ironically, it was actually Kevin Owens because I was reading like the dirt sheets, and there was a kind of like a rumored post. It was like the WWE just bought the rights to the name Kevin Owens, and then they were speculating on who that could be for, and everyone's like, it's got to be Kevin Steen. So I was like, well, who the hell is that? And the next thing you know, you're on YouTube, and it's like, oh, this guy. And so the first thing that I was exposed to of Kevin Owens' work wasn't his in-ring work, it was his promos. And his promos, I was like, this guy reminds me a lot of CM Punk, the way that he's, he can cut you with his words, and he's so fluent with it. There's no choppiness. There's no second guessing what he's about to say next. It's almost like he's reading a script, but there's nothing in front of him. There's no teleprompter. So that has always impressed me about him, even before he came to WWE.
Yeah, I think he's the best in the business right now on the mic. I don't think anyone can touch him. I would even put him above someone like Heyman. Like when you watch,
that's risky.
When you watch Kevin Owens promos, he just has this rhythm. Like you said, it's so organic. It doesn't sound like he's reading off a script, and it's so rare that he gets what chance, because there's just no room to fit in that chant in his promos. And the other thing is he comes out, his music hits. He's obviously massively popular. He's the United States champion. He's got this new Face of America gimmick that people love. They'll pop for his music. And then by the end of his promo, they're booing the hell out of him.
Yeah.
And that's the most impressive thing you could ever do as a wrestler to me. That's like, Cena does it the opposite way. His music
Mhm.
will hit, people will boo him. By the end of his promo, they're cheering for him.
Right.
Owens being able to do it, the reverse is just wildly impressive. Talking like news this week, there wasn't a ton of news, but there is something we have to touch on, and that's the Seth Rollins 2K18 cover reveal trailer, I guess.
Yeah. It
Uh,
was fucking awesome. It
it
was
was
awesome.
it was amazing. This is like
Yeah.
I blogged it on the site, and I brought up the Goldberg one last year, which was awesome. The
Yep.
downtown one with Brock in the Underground Fighting Club, which was awesome.
Mhm.
They need to let the people that write these 2K commercials write the television show.
Yeah. Yeah. Who was which one was the cover where they were like throwing all like the legend stuff in the fire? It was Sting? Was it Sting?
Might have been Sting, yeah. Yeah, it was. It was. Sting wasn't on the cover, but he was the DLC. That's what it was.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was. I remember like one of the promos where they were just like tossing stuff in the fire. It was like Mankind's mask and the Undertaker's hat and somebody's boots and all that stuff. Like that one was pretty cool. This one, I mean, Punk's was great. It was kind of like a 1940s like propaganda rally type deal.
To fit
Thought
in with
that
the
was
cult
really
of
cool.
personality kind of intro type
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, like that totally fit his personality. But for this one, the Seth Rollins one, I love this one because um like the message that they're trying to say is like don't be like anyone else, and Seth Rollins breaks into the WWE archives and he's just trashing all this stuff. And I thought the best part of it was like he reaches out like his hand to Andre the Giant and then smashes the head off of his statue, and like that's like a holy shit for a video game commercial. Like I was like taken aback. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe that they're doing this. Like this is Andre the Giant. Like this is a guy that they prop up every single year for the Battle Royal WrestleMania. Hall of Famer, a legend, and he's no longer with us. So I was like, I feel like some people are gonna react poorly to that image, but I think that it gets across the point of don't be like anyone else. Like be who you are. And Seth Rollins is a unique character as much as you don't like him, Robbie.
Yeah, not a
He's a
fan.
very unique
I
character, and
think
I do like him.
I did get a few tweets that were like, "Don't be like anyone else except Kenny Omega," and like elbow nudge. The commercial's so good though. Like the commercial watches like it's the first 2 minutes of a movie.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the villain. Like, that's the big villain, and then John Cena is gonna have to like defend the honor of the WWE or something. I was ready to put all my chips in for that movie, and then the commercial ends, and I'm like, oh man, I'm not gonna get to see one of these until next year. Like,
Yeah.
and I blogged it. It's like, yeah, it's goofy. Rollins probably like kills a guy in that commercial, and he wrecks the WWE headquarters. Do I want to see that on television? Do I want to see him kill a guy? No, but like
Kinda.
maybe.
So I think the biggest point to take away from the commercial or just the video game in general is that I believe this is the first time in a long time where there's been a superstar on the cover that hasn't been like a legend.
Yep.
It's been Goldberg.
First time in
it's
a
been
really long
Sting.
time. It's almost like with this trailer, they heard the fans complaining like that. Like, let's not focus on the legends. We want to focus on the guys we got right now. And this trailer was Seth Rollins, trashing all the legends.
The only reason
memorabilia.
why I was fine with the legends being on the cover was because it was a precursor to that legend coming back. Like if you're
Yeah.
just being like, hey, we're putting Sting on the cover. I don't know why. Like we're just doing it. Like he hasn't been around and I mean, he's never been in the WWE, but if that's a precursor to Sting coming back and you get a couple, a WrestleMania match out of that, you get a feud with Seth Rollins, it's worth it. That kind of like tickles their balls a little bit. Like, hey, if you come back, we'll put you on the video game and you can make money that way as well.
They
as,
make a lot of
in
money.
ring.
They make
Yeah.
a lot of money. Like, I think
Right.
Goldberg's Survivor Series match with Brock, almost his whole paycheck was like paid by 2K for that night,
Yeah.
which is
So-
nuts.
I'm fine with if putting legends on the cover of the video game if that means that they actually come back, but it's different when you're just like, oh, so and so's on the cover for no fucking reason.
Yeah. I'm kind of excited for the game, but I haven't really enjoyed a WWE video game since 2K14, which I will say to this day is the best wrestling video game of all time. Oh, I guess Bob never played No Mercy. He's too young to play No Mercy.
I was literally about to say that. I was like, did you ever own an N64?
Of course, I own an N64 currently. Played No Mercy, played the hell out of it. Played
What about
WWF
WrestleMania
Warzone.
2000?
Played WrestleMania 2000. Played WCW NWO Revenge. Played them all.
Did you have the original PlayStation? Did you have
Yep.
the SmackDown games?
Yep, SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, I think, is the number 2.
Yeah.
And that's also, a lot of people would put Here Comes the Pain over that. But I was a big Shut Your Mouth guy. You could leave the arena, go out Penn Station, Madison Square Garden, fight outside. It was
So
awesome.
here's a funny story. When I was so back in my day, Robbie, before we had the interwebs and before we had ways to download music, I was to this day like I'm still like obsessed with like wrestling entrance themes. Like my whole gym playlist is all wrestling entrance themes because like nothing jacks me up like a wrestling entrance theme. Um, so I had N64, but my best friend had PlayStation. And on N64, if you had like No Mercy or WrestleMania 2000, the wrestling entrance themes were like electronic. They weren't
Yeah,
like the
yeah, they were
actual
the
wrestling
digital
themes.
themes. Yeah.
Yes, but on PlayStation, they were the real themes. And I used to call my best friend, and he used to play the themes for me over the phone. I'd be like, just play Kane's theme for me like a couple times. And he would play the whole thing. He'd be like, all right, here comes the second one. And then he'd be like, all right, that's 3 times. All right, is that it? And I'd be like, just play the DX theme one time, and then I'm good. And that's how
Why?
I
What
like
was the point of that? You just wanted to
it.
hear him?
Yeah, like because they would be stuck in my head. You would only hear them on TV. You couldn't at that time play them on a CD yet.
Come
Like
on.
WWE The Music Volume 3 was the best one. Like that had like all like
I
the
remember I own a few WWE theme CDs, but I would
yeah.
use them for when I'd play with action figures. Like you cue up the theme, and then you make the introduction,
Yes.
the
Yeah.
entrance. Yeah.
I did that too. Yeah. So but that was before they came out with WWF The Music Volume 3 and like that's what I used to do because if it got stuck in your head, you couldn't just go on the computer and play it. There was no such thing as an iPhone. You couldn't play it there. Like there was no other way to like hear it, and there was no DVR. You couldn't go back and watch it. So yeah, that's how I used to listen to wrestling entrance themes. Hmm.
And now we're gonna get into Raw and SmackDown this week. I thought both good shows actually. I thought it was like last week they were okay. We talked about Dominion more than we talked about WWE,
Yeah,
but I thought both shows were really good this week.
yeah. Especially Raw. It's
Hmm.
been a while since since they've built up to a story. They'll have I guess like the Shield breakup comes to mind where that just came out of nowhere. That wasn't like a build up sort of thing. This was a build up with Enzo and Cass, the way that they kind of, they finished the show. Like having a heel turn for Big Cass, splitting up Enzo and Cass, finishing the show, I think puts emphasis on how significant of a moment it is, especially if you're an NXT fan, because for as popular as they were on the main roster, they were almost twice as popular down in NXT.
Yeah, I agree.
I remember, like my cousin watches NXT a lot more than I do, and he was raving about them the whole. He's like, "You got to check them out. You got to check them out. They're the best thing in NXT." And so I finally did, and I was like, "These guys are fucking awesome." I was like, "How many times have they won the NXT tag titles?" Zero. What? Zero
Yeah.
times. Are you fucking kidding me? Like this, like how are they not the top act for in the tag division in NXT? And then they come up here and again never win the tag title. So I read your blog on this, and I agree that this is it's weird. It's weird. Like I guess if what they're saying is that for them to reach their full potential, they had to split them up, but I don't think that they reached their full potential as a tag team, and that wasn't because of them. It was because of how they were booked.
They weren't booked well, and they just didn't get time. Is my issue. I think this was done way too soon, and I don't want to take anything away from either of these two during the segment, because during the segment, it was like 10 out of 10. Cass probably cut my favorite promo of the year. Enzo had literally a tear rolling down his face. Like, how could you do this? It was so well done. It could not have been more well done. After Corey Graves said, "You didn't really get attacked, Cass, did you?" And they showed Cass doing it. Everything before that was kind of a train wreck with Kurt Angle, his
Oh yeah.
1,000-yard stare doing the interrogation.
Yeah.
Everything after Corey Graves doing the introduction was amazing. 10 out of 10. I just don't feel like I feel like they did this for the moment when they're not thinking long term at all. And the former WWE writer came out and said, Vince told us don't be concerned with long term storytelling anymore, just be concerned about big moments. And that's what this felt like. Enzo and Cass never won the NXT tag team titles. Enzo and Cass never won the WWE tag team titles. Enzo and Cass never actually had a meaningful feud on the main roster. Could you
I
imagine
was
how much this moment would feel, like how much bigger it would feel if they had one of those things?
right. Well, I would argue that they had a big feud with the Dudleys, like right when they debuted, like right
Yeah.
when they came
I
out of the
feel like
gate.
so many people have forgotten that though.
The only reason why I haven't forgotten it is because, we talked about our favorite Money in the Bank cash-ins and the pop that the crowd gave to Dolph Ziggler when he came out to cash in against Alberto Del Rio. That's kind of the same feeling I had when Enzo and Cass debuted.
Yeah, it was
Like,
amazing. Enzo and Cass, and some people said this is because you're from New Jersey, so you go to Jersey, New York shows, whatever. Every show I've gone to for the past few years since they've been, even in NXT shows I've been to, they get the loudest pop of the night, and it's not even close.
yeah, no, and I've seen them a few times in Boston, and they get a tremendous pop.
Yeah,
So. I'm
they
sure it's
were
bigger in New York and New Jersey because they pander to the local audiences, and they even like dress their attire differently. Like they'll wear like Yankee pinstripes and shit like
yeah.
that. Yeah, but in Boston they still get the same pop. It's huge.
Yeah, and even the first show I ever saw them at was at NXT. It wasn't a takeover. It was the first like big show NXT ever did. It was WrestleMania 31 weekend,
Yeah.
and they were in an elimination tag team match with two other tag teams. I think the Vaudevillains and not Dash and Dawson, but the Wesley Blake, and the other guy that Alexa Bliss used to manage.
Yeah.
And it was an elimination tag match, and Enzo and Cass got the first pin. Half the crowd thought they just won the tag team titles. And it was
Really?
one of the loudest pops ever. My mom with me at that show, like it was me and my mom at NXT. And when they did their entrance, my mom was like, these guys are amazing. I
Yeah.
absolutely love these guys. On the
It's
train to WrestleMania, both this year and that year, people were doing the entire Enzo introduction. Like, these guys were so over, and WWE just doesn't have that anymore, where fans actually love the babyface.
right. Yeah, that's a great point. There's not a lot of genuine baby faces that even the smarks are all into. But with Enzo and Cass, I really hope this doesn't turn out to be like the New Age Outlaws. Like when they split the New Age Outlaws, I mean, they tried to push Billy Gunn as like an intercontinental champion or even like feud with The Rock, which
Hmm.
was ridiculous. And then Road Dogg just stayed the Road Dogg. Like he just was with X-Pac and um no major character change or direction there. He was just still the Road Dogg. But
And then they just put them back together a year later.
right, and it's because like their entrance is timeless. Like they can come out right now, and the whole crowd is gonna do the "oh you didn't know" thing. They know every single word to it. I knew every single word to that when I was a kid, and with Enzo and Cass, it's like everyone knows every single from the second that they debuted, the crowd knew every single word to their entrance. So I guess I'm not so much worried about Big Cass because whenever Enzo was out with that concussion, they kind of, gave him a little bit of a singles push, knowing that it was temporary. Probably as like a dry run to see how that would go. Um, but obviously Vince loves the big guys, and he's fucking Big Cass, so I think he'll be fine. I do worry about what becomes of Enzo from here because I love Enzo.
Yeah,
I
I'm
think
the
he's one of the best
exact
actors
same
we
way.
got.
I'm not worried about Cass in the slightest. I think Cass is going to win this feud. I think you got to go SummerSlam, Barclays Center in Brooklyn is the big payoff to this feud, a one-on-one like street fight match or something. If you do a street fight, you could almost build it in a, not that the wrestling will be of this caliber, but CM Punk Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam,
Yeah.
and make it a little bit believable. I do worry about Enzo. He's so good on the mic that I think he'll stay over, but if he's not booked to win matches, which he never has been, I don't know if the crowd's going to stay invested in his character at all. And I have a feeling they could move him down to the cruiserweight division, which might spice things up. But also, let's try to make that division about great wrestling. And Enzo is not a very good wrestler.
And the other thing too about Enzo, and I forget if I mentioned this to you or someone else, but like he even have a finisher? Like his finisher has been,
His finisher's Big Cass throwing him off the top rope.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like he doesn't have a singles competition finisher.
Nope. So it is a case where it's like, let's let this play out before we really judge it. But right now, just personally, I'm nervous about the long-term plans for both of them.
Well, don't you think that it makes the most sense to put Enzo with the Big Show from here?
Maybe, but like, Big Show's going to retire before WrestleMania. What do you do with Enzo after that?
You think he's going to retire before
He's
WrestleMania?
announced that. Yeah, he said last WrestleMania was his last one.
Huh.
Also on Raw, we had the return of Braun Strowman, one of my favorite acts in the entire business.
Mm-hmm.
Everything Braun Strowman does is amazing. I was watching Raw at the office because we had a storm in the city. Some trains were delayed, and I was with Young Page Views, one of our coworkers that never watches wrestling ever, and has never saw a second of wrestling before I started working at Barstool.
What does he like, by the way?
He likes outdoor stuff. He goes fishing like every weekend, and he comes back every time. He's like, "Oh, I didn't catch any fish. I was just checking the currents." It's like, all right, buddy.
That makes sense.
Sounds like you're a bad fisher. But when Braun comes out during Samoa Joe versus Roman Reigns, which was a really good match, this kid was marking out. I was marking out. Braun comes out of the ambulance. He just like kicks the doors open and he hits the Braun. And I was like, oh, he's back. Let's go. Page Views is like, whoa, that guy is huge. He comes out, he distracts him, and Page Views was like, no, he ruined the match. That was a good match. He ruined it. I was like, oh, they got him. They got him hook, line, and sinker with that. Braun comes out. He gives Reigns the reverse choke slam and challenges him to an ambulance match. Once again, made me laugh mid-promo when he said, great balls of fire.
Mm.
Ambulance match is the way to go because I think you can – whoever wins an ambulance match isn't going over huge because it's a weird stipulation.
Yeah.
And I think Braun will win and take Roman's challenge for SummerSlam against Brock and beat Brock.
You think so?
Yeah. I think Brock will retain against Samoa Joe. I think Braun beats Roman here, and we have Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman, main event of SummerSlam. Braun goes over huge, and I would love it. I would absolutely love it.
But what does that do to Brock Lesnar if he's now been defeated by Goldberg twice convincingly and then loses to Braun Strowman? So what does that do to Brock Lesnar's, I guess, build-up?
I think it makes him a competitive wrestler as opposed to like Suplex City. I think
Which is not good.
I think they're building to. I think they're building to Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania, the rematch, and I think this time they're going to have Roman Reigns go in champion and leave champion. On the SmackDown side, we had Carmella stripped of her Money in the Bank briefcase by Daniel Bryan. He came back, said, we can't have this. We're in uncharted territory because nobody has ever done this in a Money in the Bank match. So I'm going to take matters into my own hands and strip you of the briefcase. And next week on SmackDown, we're going to redo the match.
But he didn't ban James Ellsworth from ringside, which I thought was coming and it never came.
He didn't. I think Carmella's definitely going to win one way or the other next week. I don't think James Ellsworth will throw it down. I think they're redoing it because of the controversy that was created. Triple H had to go on TV and talk about, we're still giving the women the opportunity and this, that, and the next thing. It's cool because we'll see another one, but it almost makes the first one feel even less historic than it did.
Yeah.
By just redoing it. I loved in this segment that James Ellsworth went right to bringing up Daniel Bryan's newborn baby. Daniel Bryan was like, if you ever bring up my daughter again, I'm going to punch you in the fucking face and fire you. It was like, whoa, you shut that down right away. Like, nobody's ever going to bring up your baby again.
I wonder if that was discussed beforehand or if he was just trying to get some cheap heat and Daniel Bryan took genuine exception to that.
No, I think it was discussed before. I think Daniel Bryan was probably like, I know I just took a long paternity leave. I don't want this to become a thing where people are constantly bringing up my kid, so let me, concoct something to shut it down immediately.
It's fair.
James Ellsworth and Carmella, by the way, we did a bunch of test shows before the podcast launched, and we talked about how we felt James Ellsworth we were tired of him, and we were like, yeah, it's run its course. Yep. I'm back on board with James Ellsworth. I think he's really good in this role.
Yeah, he can definitely create some major heat for Carmella. I mean, it's more so for him, but it inadvertently goes down to Carmella. I didn't really have that thought until last night. Like, I didn't really have that thought watching Money in the Bank, but when he came out to cut that promo last night before everyone else came out and just telling the crowd to shut up, and I think he's gained more confidence on the mic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think if you look at his promos from when he first, but part of that was by design. Like, he was supposed to be like the timid, like skinny baby face that had no shot in the world. But now you can definitely see that he's a little bit more confident, or a lot more confident, actually.
A lot more confident. And Carmella, by the way, awesome on the mic.
Yeah,
Carmella's like one of the best women on the roster, one of the best on the roster on the mic. And
yeah.
that was not how she started in NXT. She wasn't very good. And she's one of the best performance center creations, in my opinion, because
I think she went to
she was
she's a
not a wrestler
UMass girl.
beforehand.
Pretty
Yeah,
sure she went to UMass. Shout out to UMass.
shout out UMass. And finally on SmackDown, the United States Championship once again has an open challenge every week.
I love this.
I absolutely love this. John Cena's United States Open Challenge was some of my favorites. I think that was the best run John Cena has ever had in his career. Every week he would come in and deliver an awesome match. It was something you could really look forward to if you bought a ticket to Raw. It was like, well, this might suck, but at least we'll get the John Cena Open Challenge, and it'll be a good match every time.
Right. And I love Kevin Owens' spin on it, where it's like, yeah, it's an open challenge, but they actually have to be from Dayton, Ohio.
Yep. He said it's an open challenge, but you have to be from Dayton, Ohio, and Chad Gable answered the call. They had a good match.
Yeah.
Kevin Owens is the guy to do this too. Like Kevin Owens is the guy that can come out, cut a promo every week, and then deliver a good match. And
Yeah.
there's very few people on the roster that can keep it fresh every week. He's the guy to do it. This will heighten the face of America stuff. There's a lot of possibilities for if he keeps doing they have to be from this place, this place. He could say some bumfuck wherever, and then we get the return of some crazy legend like the Mountie or something who trained him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could return like a weird mid-card jobber from the Attitude Era that just happened to be from wherever he says. And I
Yeah.
think I'm really like this was good, but I'm looking at the future already, and I'm like, this is going to be good for the next few months. And then
Yeah.
eventually you could do they have to be from where Toronto, and then I'm from Winnipeg, you idiot. The return of Chris Jericho.
Which would be fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think that, there's definitely a possibility, or a great possibility, to have some major returns. What night of the week do they do the old school night? I mean, what part of
They
the year
haven't
do
done
they
it
do
in a
that?
few years. They usually do it in January though.
Okay.
That's
Yeah,
like one of my favorite nights too. I love the look of the ropes and everything. They'll do the ropes for 4th of July, but I love the old school blue apron, all that. One year I want them to do a cage match where they bring down the blue cage.
Yeah. Blue Cage was vintage 90s, 80s around
Or
there.
even a ladder match with the orange ladders. That'd be great. Like WrestleMania 10.
Yep. Yep. So what is the status on Kurt Angle as an in-ring performer? Because I think obviously at some point we're going to see him in a match, but they're kind of just monitoring how he handles life on the road. Is that right?
I think so. And I think they're still like doing some medical tests. He's had a lot of concussions in his career, and he has the broken frickin' neck.
Sure.
So
It's been broken since the 90s.
it's been broken since the 90s. I think we'll definitely see him at SummerSlam against Triple H.
Triple H. Okay. Because
Yeah.
I figured, you have Kurt Angle, Mr. Captain America would be the perfect opponent for Kevin Owens in a big match.
That
like
would be awesome. I'm sure Kevin would like go crazy over that too. Kevin Owens, as we've talked about personally, Kurt Angle versus Shane McMahon at King in the Ring, and that's like
Yes.
one of his favorite matches ever because that's just insane. And Kevin has said openly that he wants Shane McMahon.
Talking about broken necks, I mean, Shane McMahon almost broke his neck two different times in that match.
Taking the belly to belly into the glass, that
Didn't break.
did not break. It was not
What
gimmicked.
year was that? Was that 98?
It was 2001. King of the Ring 2001. I was alive for it. Shout out me. 2001, the year I started watching wrestling.
Oh yeah.
And right before we get into our interview with the face of America, United States champion Kevin Owens, we're going to do a quick cream of the crop. Someone sent in that name suggestion. I loved it. Little shout out to the Macho Man. Pour one out. Our favorite something every week. We're going to pick a new thing every week. This week, there wasn't really a theme. Last week, we had the Money in the Bank cash-in because of the pay-per-view. So I'm springing this on Carrabis. He doesn't know what the theme is.
No idea.
It's going to be a quick one, an easy one, because it's the question we get so often. Jared, who is your favorite wrestler of all time?
Kane. I grew up a huge Kane fan. That's how I got
Get
into
out
wrestling.
of here.
No, I swear to God. My first pay-per-view that I ever saw was Bad Blood, 97. Kane comes out, debuts, rips off the door to the cell, And I was hooked. I was like, who the fuck is this guy? I love this guy. And I met him. Like, I have to dig up those pictures when I went to go meet him in like 98 or 99. It's like little ass Jared, 10
Skinny
years old.
Jared?
Oh yeah, he's went to go shake Kane's hand, and my hand like fit inside of his palm. Um, when he took the mask off in 2003, I was out. That's when I stopped watching wrestling. Then
You were
when
you were one of those bring the mask back, save the business guys?
yep, I was out. That's when I kind of outgrew it, and I was like, I'm not watching anymore. And then when he put it back on in 2011, I was like, holy fuck, like I need to
Kane's
start
back.
watching again.
Let's go.
Yep. So when he put it back on, I was back in. Um, so it was more like I came back for Kane, but I stayed for Punk. So like Punk, I would say is like my number two. Undertaker is definitely in there too, but yeah, that's really why I started watching again, was because Kane put his mask back on.
I'm shocked by your answer. I thought I knew who your favorite wrestler was. I thought it was Shawn Michaels. I don't know why that was the name that stuck out, but when you said Kane, I was like, you're fucking with me. That
No,
is
huge.
I don't
huge
think a lot of
fan.
people share that with you. So that's
I've
kind of cool.
I can honestly say that I've seen every single one of Kane's televised matches.
That is crazy. It's
Yeah.
also interesting because my favorite wrestler of all time is tag team partners with your favorite wrestler, and it's Daniel Bryan. It's like
Aha.
far and away Daniel Bryan. It was Rey Mysterio when I was really young, and then when I got a little older and started watching way more wrestling, it was like Shawn Michaels for years. And then as soon as Daniel Bryan was in Team Hell No, I said he got me into the Indies earlier in the show, and that was huge. But as soon as like the Team Hell No era came around, I realized, like, wait, this guy is definitely my favorite wrestler of all time. Like, this guy goes over Shawn Michaels for me. And his run to WrestleMania 30, starting at SummerSlam when he beat John Cena and got cashed in on, is my favorite, like, time period I've ever watched wrestling. It's close with the Summer of Punk 2011, but I've never been more invested, and I've never been such a mark in my life. And it was fun to be a mark. Like, the shows every week weren't that good. I'll be honest. Raw wasn't very good. The ratings were down. A lot of boring stuff. Every single week, I would go crazy for Daniel Bryan's entrance music. There were so many moments when he turns on Bray Wyatt in the steel cage and the crowd goes just ballistic for him. I was crying. Wrestling makes me cry a lot. When he won the title at WrestleMania 30, that's my favorite wrestling moment of all time. It's my favorite match of all time. It's my favorite, maybe my favorite WrestleMania of all time. I cried so much like a baby. I've never cried more in my life than when he had to retire and gave his speech.
Yeah,
But
in
his
Seattle.
body of work really, like, it's far and away my favorite body of work ever, including his Ring of Honor material and PWG and all the other indies he did. But I still find myself going back, and I got to meet Daniel Bryan in 2013, I think, 2014, and I shook his hand and I was like, listen, man, like, I went through some tough stuff. Your matches really distracted me from it. And I've seen everything from, main event of WrestleMania 30 to the headlock match with Cesaro and PWG. And he was like, you saw the headlock match? And I was like, yeah. And the match I'm talking about, I'll see if I could find it online. It's extremely hard to find. It was a show PWG had against Cesaro. It was Daniel Bryan and Cesaro. They went 20 minutes, and the whole match was a headlock. Daniel Bryan didn't get out of a headlock for 20 minutes, and it is enthralling. It is an amazing match. Super Dragon, the guy that books PWG, apparently hated it and like tore him a new one. Daniel Bryan was like, most people that meet me here, like at WrestleMania Access, they haven't seen that headlock match. And I was like, I've seen the headlock match, man. I've seen it.
I thought you made it sound like it was like the stipulation was you had to put your opponent in a headlock. They just were in a headlock the entire time?
Yeah. It was just like he got caught in a headlock 2 seconds into the match, and 20 minutes later he got out. And him getting out of the headlock was like the loudest pop in pro wrestling history. But, yeah, Daniel Bryan's my favorite of all time. We'll be back. You could send in suggestions for Cream of the Crop to our email address, fromthetop@barstoolsports.com. Now we're going to throw it over to our interview that we recorded yesterday with the face of America, Kevin Owens. This was a great interview. Really enjoyed doing it. Thanks for coming on the show, Kevin. Here you go. All right, joining us now is the WWE United States Champion, the face of America, the 2-time Intercontinental Champion, 1-time Universal Champion, 1-time NXT Champion, Kevin Owens. Kevin, what's going on, man?
Hey, not much. I'm glad you got the NXT title in there. People usually forget that one.
No, you can't forget the NXT title. You held it for a long time.
Yeah, and I beat Sami Zayn for it like 2 months after I started. That's a big deal. People really talk that one down, but I'm pretty proud of that one too.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, you were at NXT kind of ground floor. You helped make NXT what it is today, so can't forget it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Finn Balor deserves most of the credit for where it's gotten to, but yeah, I'm glad I could help.
We're glad that you made it to the show, especially after Money in the Bank on Sunday, where I was watching the match and I was just like, is he trying to not do our interview because he is really getting killed out there?
Yeah, it's been a rough couple of days with the ladder match on Sunday, and now last night I found out a good friend of mine passed away. But I'm glad I could do this. Actually, I always enjoy doing podcasts and stuff like that, and I've known you for a while, and I'm glad we get to do this today. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. The ladder match on Sunday was just incredible, and I feel like you're sneakily building up your ladder match resume, and you're becoming one of the best ladder match guys in wrestling, maybe ever. Do you have like one ladder match where you look back on and you're like, that's what I'm proudest of as far as the gimmick goes, the stipulation goes?
I've done a lot of them even before I was in WWE. I did a bunch in Ring of Honor. I did a couple in PWG. But like my first ladder match actually involved Sami Zayn, to nobody's surprise, and that was like in 2003, I think. And I don't know, that even in that first one, I just wanted to make sure whatever I did that night with the ladders was something people remember. So that's kind of where I started building these contraptions or thinking of these things we could do that hadn't necessarily been done before. So I appreciate people taking notice. I always try to kind of go all out in ladder matches, I guess, because when I was a kid and I was watching wrestling, there was nothing that like make me more happy than watching a ladder match. I guess those were my favorite kind of matches, And there's been so many great ones throughout the years. I don't know that I have one specifically that I'm more proud of than the others. I guess there's one against El Generico at PWG, at a show called Steenwolf that took place a few years ago before I got signed with WWE, obviously. Mm-hmm. I really like that one. The finish actually involved Generico like tearing down a part of the roof of the building, part of the ceiling of the building to get the title down, and that one was just a blast. But every single ladder match I've done in WWE have been pretty wild, and I've liked every one of them. But I'd have to say I think Sundays was actually probably the roughest one on me physically. There was just something about that first fall I took on the ladder where Sami Zayn threw me off the top rope onto the open ladder that really rocked me. And that was pretty early into the match, so it didn't bode well for me for the rest of the evening. But,
yeah, that one didn't look fun at all.
Yeah, I'm glad people, like, I did read on Twitter here and there that people are kind of taking notice of like ladder matches. Like, I'd love to get like a similar reputation to, in a way, I guess if you think of ladder matches nowadays, you think of the Hardy Boys, right? Like they built such a legacy in ladder matches. I'd love to be spoken of in those terms as well down the line. Obviously, I want to do, once it's all said and done, and I'm done with wrestling, I want to make sure people remember me, and that I've had enough memorable moments that people consider me a big part of history, and not I want people to remember what I've done, and if my ladder matches can help in accomplishing that, then that's cool.
Yeah, that one you spoke about with El Generico at Steenwolf, I talked about on the show on Monday. If you haven't seen that match, you have to seek it out. I know it's on the Best of El Generico compilation if you can't find the Steenwolf DVD. It's one of the wildest wrestling matches I've ever seen, let alone ladder matches.
Yeah, well, there's something about that building too. Like, in Reseda in California, they run in this pretty small building, and it's packed. People, like, standing room only. People are like standing up against the wall just to be in there. And if you add, like, let alone the fact that there's barely any room for the wrestlers to go outside the ring because the place is so packed. Imagine when you add ladder to that element. It's just it makes for a pretty wild scene. It was a great time. I would recommend people trying to find it and watch it. It's one of the matches I'm most proud of outside of WWE.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'll be going to Rosita for the first time ever for Bola this year in September, and that's it's like Rosita, the American Legion, and the Tokyo Dome are like the two wrestling venues I've never been to that are on the bucket list still.
Yeah, PWG is such a big part of me even being in WWE in the first place, because that's where Bola, the Battle of Los Angeles tournament, is actually where in 2013 William Regal came to a show in Reseda in that building and saw me perform, and that's kind of what got the ball rolling as far as me getting to WWE. So I owe PWG a lot, and it was such a huge part of my career for so long. And yeah, there's just something about that building and that promotion and those fans that just kind of creates magic every single time there's a show there. So you're gonna have a blast for sure.
Yeah, I'm very, very excited. Looking forward to it. I know you're super busy on the road. You don't have a ton of time, but are you able to keep up with the independent scene at all since signing with WWE?
I really don't have the chance to as much as I wish. The one way I keep up is I guess through Twitter, through social media, whatever. Not really Facebook, because I can't stand Facebook, but I like Twitter, so I follow a lot of the independent promotions I used to wrestle for, and I just kind of keep an eye on everything that's going on. But I can't say that I've watched a full independent wrestling show actually, I don't think I've watched a full independent wrestling show since I started with WWE, because we are so busy. But also, I don't like. So I think there's a thing that happens when you're a wrestler and you watch other people wrestle a lot, where you can't help but take from the people you watch, even without doing it on purpose. It's almost unconscious sometimes, like you're just taking things, or not really. I'm not saying like moves necessarily, but even mannerisms or ways to tell a story in the ring and stuff like that. And since I never want to be doing what everybody else is doing, I feel like I don't want to watch current wrestling too much, whether it's on the independents or even WWE itself, because I want to be my own performer. So any wrestling I do watch is mostly stuff from the past, from the best. Like I'll always go back and watch Austin, Rock, and Shawn Michaels stuff, and Dusty, and guys like that have already influenced me in the past, but I can always learn from. Not and I don't go in trying to study or watching for specific things. I just feel like if I watch enough of their stuff, I'll pick up things, like I said, even without trying, and it'll make me a better performer. But I don't want to be like everybody else that's doing it right now, so I don't really watch any current stuff.
Yeah, I feel like the what you said about watching old wrestling and kind of not wanting to take from anyone currently has shown through in your current incarnation of Kevin Owens, the current character, since you won the United States Championship for the second time and declared yourself the face of America. I feel like it has a lot of throwback tones to it, and I'm really enjoying the work that you're doing with this run, because I think it's such a like good throwback feel that fits in this era.
Yeah, maybe it does, and if it does, like I said, it's not really on purpose. I just I felt like it was something different was needed. I wanted to do something different than what I had been doing, and that was with the people in charge also felt like something different could be good, so we gave that a shot, and it's going pretty good. The Face of America thing is really it's really grabbing people's attention. If I'm walking around in the street or I go to a gas station and stuff like that, whenever I do get recognized, which is pretty often, because obviously WWE is pretty huge. The first thing they say is, "Oh, the Face of America," So they've really, like, that moniker, that whole persona has really taken off, and it's kind of cool, because I feel like that I've never done something like that before. I was always just I was Kevin Steen before. Now I'm Kevin Owens, but I was never like I never had another layer to a character before. It was just kind of always just me,
Mm-hmm.
And now I've got this persona I'm kind of playing with and developing as time goes on, and it's been a lot of fun, and I'm enjoying the run as well. We'll see where it goes, but it's going pretty well so far.
Was this inspired by anything specific, or was it? I know Jimmy Jacobs, one of your good friends, is now a writer with the WWE. Did he have an influence on it?
Well, any idea I ever have, I run by Jimmy just because we're very close friends, and he's really good at what he does. You've heard it from other people before as well. If you listen to wrestling podcasts here and there, guys that have worked with him behind the scenes in the last few years that he's been in the WWE. But I've known that for almost 15 years at this point. Since I've met him, he's one of the most creative and one of the most talented guys I've ever met. So anything I have, in mind, I always run by him. But honestly, this Face of America thing was something I was just originally it was just kind of a line I wanted to use, after winning the United States Championship. But I did have the idea of, kind of making it my whole thing, like really diving deep into it and making the United States title my whole persona, almost my identity for this, however long this is going to last, whatever. So I did run the idea by Jimmy, but honestly, it's something I ran by Vince, and he really sunk his teeth into the Face of America moniker. He when I mentioned that to him, I saw in his eyes oh, he liked that idea a lot. And literally that night, or that an hour after leaving his office, they were like, "Hey, we got to get pictures of you in the suit and this and that. We're going to go with the Face of America. We're going to make a new Tron, a new graphics, everything." So he really that idea really spoke to him, and then it just kind of even got bigger than even what I expected to, and a lot faster as well. But I've been having a lot of fun with it.
Hey Kevin, it's Jared. During your feud with Chris Jericho, the WWE ended up using some of the photos from when you were a kid idolizing Chris. How much fun was it to work with him, and which one did you enjoy more, teaming with him or feuding with him?
Well, that whole run was a real blast because it was very organic as well. It didn't. It's not like something we planned. And Chris has talked about that in his podcast before. It just kind of it stems from one match where we teamed with each other completely randomly on a SmackDown from the UK last year, and we just kind of. I don't know. We didn't even really know each other that well at that point either. He had just come back a few months before, and besides the the exchange we had on direct messages on Twitter that he ended up posting on the Titantron a few months into our feud. Besides that exchange, we had actually never really had any interaction. We wrestled a couple of times the summer before, but then he went away, and then once he came back, on a personal level, really didn't know each other very well. But then we teamed in that one match, and just our chemistry, I guess, just our natural chemistry, just really people really took notice of that, and I think it's something Vince McMahon and the other powers that be at WWE kind of put in the back of their mind for something down the line. And sure enough, SummerSlam came around last year, and Chris and I were going to be a team. And then I think at that point it was probably just going to be a one-night only kind of thing, but it quickly developed into something a lot more. And a lot of what you saw between Chris and I was just us being us, and we obviously became pretty close throughout everything, working with each other every week and, bouncing ideas back and forth on what we could do. And, it all came to a boiling point with the turn, which had to happen, and I think people wanted to see it happen. But I also think, in a way, people didn't want to see it happen because
right.
What we had been doing was people seemed pretty entertained by, and I personally felt like it had to happen.
Right.
We could have done this for we probably could have stayed together as a team or as partners or whatever for 2 years, 3 years, and had a lot of fun with it, and people would have enjoyed it, but. There was no better stage in WrestleMania for the match that would follow the turn and everything, and there's no doubt that getting to work with someone I watched as a kid, for so many years, and being the both of us being Canadian, I kind of right away gravitated towards him as one of my favorite performers in WWE when I was just a fan. So to get to share a moment like that with him and to get to be in the ring of WrestleMania with him was definitely something I'll remember for a long time.
Yeah, because you went on his podcast when you first signed with the company, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Was any chemistry sort of built in that exchange at all to set the foundation for teaming in the future?
I mean, I can't say that it was, because besides that podcast, we really didn't have any like interaction with each other until you guys, started seeing us team on TV. Like I said, we wrestled each other a few times in the summer of 2015 when I first got called up to the main roster. And, like you said, I had done the podcast with him, a few months before that. But then, he left. He left to go, to go do his music thing for a while, and then he came back to the Royal Rumble last year. And between the Royal Rumble and the the time we teamed in Europe there that I mentioned, which I think was in April, it's not like we were traveling together or talking a lot. We really didn't have any kind of interaction at all. So. It just really sparked from that one team, like that one time we teamed, and all it was just us kind of letting loose, because that's the directive we got. Vince McMahon was just like, "Hey, just go out there and do your thing," and we did, and it ended up turning out to be something that turned into a whole thing for almost a year. So.
Right.
There really was no plan. There was no. It really just happened the way it did.
I've noticed that some performers in the company have switched their social media accounts to their real names, and they post about their real lives outside of the ring. But you, in my opinion, have the best Twitter account in all of pro wrestling, because it's an extension of the Kevin Owens character. How important do you think social media has been to building the Kevin Owens character?
Well, I think it was actually pretty important in even getting here, because even before I got to WWE, I would use Twitter pretty much the same way you see me use it now. Mm-hmm. But the Twitter account, like you said, some performers have switched it to their real names and stuff like that. And it's almost more like a marketing tool at this point. But for me, it's just, I don't know, it's just something I started doing, in I think 2010, because Colt Cabana told me, "Hey, you should really get a Twitter account." I'm like, all right, I guess I'll get one. And then I did, and I just started posting random tweets here and there just for my my own entertainment. And then, I kind of grew this like cult following through those years, like from 2010 to 2013, when I first got noticed by WWE or whatever. I built up a nice little following for everything I was doing on the independent scene, and a lot of people would always say how much they enjoyed my Twitter account, because I don't really hold any punches, and it's really not just me like trying to sell people something. I'm just being me, and I guess being me entertains a lot of people, which is great, because that's what it's for. I don't take Twitter too seriously, although it's harder being on Twitter now that since I came to WWE, obviously I'm exposed to a lot more people, and a lot more people know who I am, and that also equates to a lot more idiots knowing who I am, and there's a lot of really stupid people on there, but I still enjoy it, and it says Kevin Owens on there now, but it really still is just me. I kind of refrain from posting about my wife and my kids now. I don't do it anywhere as much as I used to, because of the idiots I just referred to a few seconds ago. But before I was in WWE, that's really all I did. I between posting pictures of my family and talking about stuff I'm doing with them, and firing back at people that are trying to insult me on there. That's really all I use Twitter for. But now, it's kind of the same thing. I don't really put my family out there too much anymore, but any answer, like any replies you see me send to a fan, it's me. It's what I think. If something catches my eye and I think this guy needs to be put in this place, I do it. It's just the way I am. I just can't help it. But I know a lot of people get a big kick out of that.
Oh yeah, it's great. I draw a lot of inspiration from that myself to fight back against the trolls on Twitter. But you mentioned your family.
There's some really astonishing things on there. Like yesterday, I got a guy sent me a guy sent me a tweet, and he said my hashtag penis looks better than the face of America, and I couldn't help. I couldn't help but. I replied to him. I said, "Well, great hashtag," because What can you say to that? It's
I
just
saw
so
that last night,
unbelievable.
and I laughed so hard at him wanting to
Yeah, or
hashtag that.
I've got people trying to come at me and call me fat or whatever they want to do. Like that's obviously the most common the common insult that's used for me, and I don't know if people think are clever with that one. It's not like it's not like I've never heard it before, but this one guy made a reference to that, and then I look at his picture, which is another thing. Like I do my research. I like to go on those people's accounts and see what the stuff they've been tweeting or retweeting and stuff like that, and just kind of get some ammunition. And then that guy didn't have to go too far because as soon as I saw his picture, he looks like me. You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's pretty easy.
Yeah. We have one more kind of fun question, and then people want to hear about how we got acquainted in the first place. And I've been putting it off. I was like, I'll wait till I could actually talk to Kevin about it publicly.
Yeah.
But what was your most embarrassing moment backstage?
Backstage. I guess it wasn't seen by a whole lot of people. But and I don't even remember specifically what the joke was, but I remember Chris Jericho and I went into Vince's office to pitch something to him, and Triple H was in there too, and we just we did the pitch, everything was fine, and then right before I left, Vince made a joke to me, and I can't remember what it was exactly, but I didn't get it. I had no idea what he's talking about. So I was like, yeah, okay, and then he could see I didn't get it, so he made another joke and really popped himself. Like, he laughed. And I was like, and I looked at Triple H, and he was just kind of shrugging. I don't know. So I walked out. I'm like, oh, man, I know he was joking. I just don't get it. So later on, I had to, I passed Triple H in the hall. I'm like, hey, dude, what the hell is he talking about? He's like, oh, yeah. And then he explained to me the joke. I'm like, oh. Okay, yeah, I get it now. I was like, yeah, he loved it. He's like, even after you left, he was like, I got him so good. But I had no idea what he was talking about. So I guess that was a little embarrassing just because I wasn't sharp enough to get Vince's humor there. Yeah. But besides that, I can't think of anything too embarrassing, honestly, I guess. There's a story I could tell a little bit that involves Seth Rollins, and that wasn't embarrassing either. It was just kind of funny. It was basically his reaction to me getting called up on the main roster so quick. But I know that my DVD, is coming out in a few weeks on July 3rd or July 4th, and that story is in there. And I think I'll save it for the people that are going to get the DVD. I'm not even sure that I've never told the story before on another podcast or something, but yeah, that one was pretty funny as well.
Nice little plug for the DVD. Check it out.
There you go.
Kevin Owens story.
Yeah, I snuck it in there.
Yep. So we got acquainted in 2014. I had been watching the Weekend Escapades. You used to do a YouTube show when you were on the Independents where you would just document whatever you did that weekend. And it was kind of like what the Young Bucks are doing now with Being the Elite, but less angles and less storytelling and more just
it wasn't like something I scripted out or wrote out or thought of. It was literally just I was inspired by Cole Cabana that did this Wrestling Road Diaries thing where it was basically him on the road for a few weeks, and he put it out. He recorded everything and put it on DVD. I just did it for YouTube, so every week or so I would put out 10, 15, 20-minute video of just, I would leave for my run of independent shows on a Thursday or Friday, and I would just kind of record myself going through that weekend with the people around me and the shows and stuff like that. It wasn't like it wasn't a show, but, really it was just a diary of me going about with my life. But I actually think that also helped me kind of get this little cult following I had before getting to WWE.
Yeah, I think so too, because I was watching that. I had been a fan of yours before you started that, and then I started watching that, and it added like a new, not only is this guy a really good wrestler, he seems like a really good dude, and all of the wrestlers that you were talking to that were your buddies, you had Eddie Edwards on there, you had Colt Cabana on there a ton, and I was like, these people all seem like people I would want to hang out with. So
yeah, that was probably my favorite part of the Weekend Escapades was having Eddie Edwards on there. And
yeah,
I felt
just talking about Adam Sandler movies and stuff every
yeah,
week.
but Eddie Edwards is honestly one of the funniest dudes and just one of the greatest guys you could ever meet. And I think a lot of people didn't realize how funny and entertaining he could be. Because his wrestling persona doesn't really allow him to show that. He's more of a straight up no nonsense kind of performer in the ring. But I was glad to be able to kind of expose how great of a guy this guy is and how funny he is. And that was probably my favorite part of the entire escapades, was just getting to give Eddie Edwards a platform to be who he was.
Yeah, even Drake Younger, who is now a referee in the WWE,
yeah,
just
Drake
had so many funny moments.
Yes.
But I was watching that and I was like, I want to be friends with these guys. So like, I took my one in was, I was like, Pro Wrestling Tees had just started at the time. I was like, maybe I could design some shirts. So I started designing shirts for a few people: Joey Ryan, ACH, Candice LeRae, and I got into a Ring of Honor show by telling ACH, I was like, do you think you could get me in? And he's like, well, how old are you? And I was like, 18. And at the time I was 15, I think.
Yeah, but we've spoken about this before. ACH was the perfect person for you to fool.
Yep.
Because he's actually, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, but he's kind of how could I say, he's kind of an idiot sometimes. So, I'm not shocked at all to hear that.
Yep. So I met you at that show. It was actually, you were facing Shinsuke Nakamura that night.
Yeah.
And I met you and I was like, hey, I like did some designs I'd like to show you, and you gave me your email address. We kind of just linked up through that, and that was like, it's not the most exciting story of this is how I met Kevin Owens, but we linked up through that and always kept in touch through email.
Well, what's funny is I barely remembered that particular meeting. But I do remember, exchanging emails and all that stuff and talking. But I remember once I had started with WWE, you made a drawing for me and my family. Like us and then I was at a signing at NXT. I think it must have been WrestleMania weekend, right?
Yeah, it was in San
Jose. You came up and handed me one of the copies, and that's when, oh man, you're the guy who and then I kind of tied everything together. Like, oh right, okay, you're the T-shirt design guy, and then since that moment we kept touch, and I remember you contacted me when you were about to start training for wrestling and all that stuff, and I don't know, I could just see you're clearly a good guy, and you really love wrestling, and that speaks to me obviously because I love it too, and I loved it since from the time I was 11 years old. So I'll always remember you messaged me after your first in-ring training, I think, and you figured out pretty quick that the physical part of what we do wasn't for you.
Yeah, that was like a month in actually. So I was like messaging Kevin and I was like, yeah, I'm very excited to start training. And then like a month in, I was like, oh God, this is not at all what I thought it would be. Like
Right.
And I was realizing this is not what I want to do with my life. And it was the first
time
in my life
that's
I
what
did
I
realize
respected.
that.
I think you remember the email I sent you back when
of course,
you told me that. I really respected you. Like, so many people will try and realize it's not for them. And, then some of them will power through and become, and reach another level and end up making great careers out for themselves. But other people will also, realize it's not for them and then just keep trying and become terrible wrestlers and go on to do dangerous things and not, as many incredible performers there are on the independent scene right now all over the world. There's so many incredible wrestlers. There's just as many, if not more, really bad wrestlers who shouldn't be in the ring, who shouldn't be calling themselves wrestlers, who are doing just dangerous things because they're not skilled enough or haven't trained enough, or you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a lack of self-awareness.
Yeah,
you tried it and
me.
you knew
I realized
it's not for you.
I didn't want to be that guy. That was
Well, that's a huge. I commend you for that. You had the common sense that a lot of people should have, but they don't.
Yeah. So I emailed you and I was like, you know how much I love wrestling. What do I do from here? Like, I still want to be in the wrestling business somehow. Like, this is my dream forever. Is there any way I could get into the business? And you sent me like a few emails back, like one after the other of like, you could do this, like, don't give up, don't worry about it. and now I'm at Barstool Sports, and my job is to talk about wrestling. And it's a weird route to get into the business, if you even want to call it into the business, because I'm kind of on the outside talking to you guys still. But I attribute a lot of me getting hired at here, which is my other dream job, to those emails. And I just wanted to thank you for that.
I appreciate that. I'm glad I could help. But I meant, it's funny because you caught me at a good time, too, because when you realized that the physical part of it wasn't for you and maybe you couldn't be a wrestler, I was already with WWE, and I was just realizing how big this entire operation is and how much there is to do, even if you're not a wrestler in the industry. And in WWE specifically, like, you could have a ton of jobs and still be involved in the business you love, and then so I really, my one thing was for you not to just give up on the idea of working in wrestling altogether. And then you ended up getting in touch with Cody Rhodes, and I remember Cody asking me about you, and I was really happy that he was asking me about you, because like, oh yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
And then Cody almost like took you under his wing as well, and
yeah, still
I
has.
know, I'm just really glad to see. I mean,
driving up
you
and
really
down the road with Cody.
Yeah, you really made something for yourself, and that's really cool. And now, to get to talk to you on this podcast, and you have this great gig. It's really good to see how far you've come, and I'm sure it's really just the beginning.
I really appreciate that. Before we let you go, we're starting a closing question with all of our guests. Kicking off with you, can you give our listeners an obscure match recommendation?
You mean it doesn't have to be a match of mine, right?
Nope, doesn't have to be.
Match.
Could be.
Well, it's not obscure. It's probably a match that a lot of people remember and I've seen before. But when I'm asked what my favorite match of all time is, there's the obvious answers, I guess. A lot of people will say Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior when they were kids, or, there's a bunch of matches in Japan that a lot of people love. There's Undertaker with Shawn Michaels, which from WrestleMania 25, which may be the greatest wrestling match in history, in my opinion, like as far as execution and just the match itself, which is so perfect. But my favorite match, anytime somebody asks me what's your favorite match, not one of yours, just what's your favorite match, one of the matches that pops up right away is, I feel like a match that people kind of, when I tell them, they're like, what? But if you go back and watch it, it was just such a great time. It's Brock Lesnar versus The Big Show from Survivor Series in Madison Square Garden in, I want to say, 2002.
Really?
It's the one where Heyman turned on Brock.
Yep.
And that match, it was maybe 10 minutes, but I loved it so much. It just has Brock throwing Big Show around like he's a normal-sized dude, and it's just got the great drama when Heyman turns, and it's just, I really love that match. So it is a little bit obscure in the sense that I don't think a lot of people would necessarily consider that, to be somebody's favorite match, but it really is, very close to the top of my list, and especially now, I like it even more now that I've gotten to know Big Show, and I'm pretty close with Big Show, and I know what kind of guy he is, what kind of performer he is, and how much he really, really cares about what he does in the ring, and he loves what we do so much. It's even better. And, also having been thrown around by Brock Lesnar myself now, which happened, in Madison Square Garden a few months ago when we had our match there. By the way, there's another show coming to Madison Square Garden on July 7th, which I will be a part of. It seems like WWE can't have a show at Madison Square Garden without me.
And it's a huge
show,
too.
Because that show was a SmackDown show, and at the time I was on Raw, and they brought me over to be on the Madison Square Garden. And now it's a Raw show in theory, but a couple SmackDown guys, including myself, are going to be there. So
yourself and AJ
I think
Styles,
Kevin Owens is now synonymous with MSG. That's pretty good. But yeah, that Big Show versus Brock Lesnar match was really kind of obscure, but really one of my favorite matches ever.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. I'm going to have to go back and watch it. Like you said, you're going to be at Madison Square Garden on July 7th. One of my favorite venues ever to watch wrestling. I saw you and AJ Styles have a match there a few years ago, and you guys are once again going to be meeting, this time for the United States Championship. It is the SummerSlam Heatwave Tour at Madison Square Garden. Tickets are available on Ticketmaster July 7th. I'll be there for sure. It's 2 days before my birthday, so that'll be a little birthday present to myself. And hopefully I see you there, man. Thanks for doing this interview. It was a fun time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Right before I go, I just want to send a little shout-out to, I talked earlier about how I lost a friend last night, and I just want to talk about him a little bit. His name was Chris. He's somebody I met, wrestling on the independent scene. Him and his buddy John had a wrestling company in Cleveland called AIW, and I wrestled for them before I signed with WWE. I had so much fun there. Chris was such a good dude, and he passed away last night after having some health issues for a few months. And if you go on Twitter, today or even yesterday, you might have noticed a lot of people talking about him, and that's because he was such a good dude. And if you can keep his mother and his brother and all his friends in your thoughts in the next few days, it's a rough time. But Chris was a great person, and he's going to be really missed.
Absolutely. Chandler Biggins, a lot of people knew him by. I never met him,
That's right.
Never had the pleasure of meeting him, but everything I ever heard from anyone was that he was a fantastic guy. And I would say absolutely
he loved wrestling so much. He was just the best guy.
And seek out AIW in Cleveland. It's a great company, and I'm sure he would love you to, keep supporting them.
Absolutely.
All right, Kev, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we want to thank Kevin Owens for coming on with us today. Again, like we said at the top of the show, that was a pretty cool. I'm sure I can't. If it was cool for me, I can't even imagine what it must have been like for you having a personal relationship with the guy. But I always admire the stories of the guys who go through the indies first. I mean, obviously, if you start at NXT and you become a polished WWE product there, then that's not a path that you really want to knock, so to speak. But with the guys that go through the indies and they put in the time, and they almost have to adapt to a different style. That like you're being taught to be, a completely different style from what you were doing on the indies versus what they expect you to do at NXT versus what they expect you to do on the main roster. So I always have a ton of respect from anyone who kind of goes through the indies path to get to the WWE.
Absolutely. And Kevin Owens is truly one of the best people I've ever met in my entire life. I would say him, Cody Rhodes, like they're the best people in the business personally that I've ever dealt with. So him doing this interview did mean a lot to me. Him shouting out Chandler Biggins, former booker of AIW at the end, meant a lot to me because he was just, I never met him, like I said in the interview, but you never heard a bad word about this guy. And I urge you all check out AIW on Twitter, on their website, AIWwrestling.com, I think. Really try to show them your support and just support indie wrestling in general. We'll be back next week with a huge guest. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at FromTheTop, same on Instagram. Our email address is fromthetop@barstoolsports.com. Send in some suggestions, tips, whatever you got. And for Robbie Fox and Jared Carrabis,